Hey yo, back at it. Another walk and talk. It's been a minute. It's been a while. Haven't done one of these in it's been a little while. Hey, so it's good to be back at it. And last time I was doing one of these, I was banished to the hinterlands. So I think this one will go up on YouTube. Got the sun behind me, so we'll have to give it a minute. I'll be out of that angle in a second. Good to be with you. Good to be walking and talking. My goodness. I've been low. I've been high. I've been high long time ago. Getting strong again though. We'll see. There's that part of me that's always tentative, you know. Is it gonna last? Is it gonna take? I don't know. Last time I did a walk and talk, gosh, it's hard to think. I think I was in Oregon. I think I was in the middle of nowhere in Oregon, so I think I maybe am a little too warmly dressed. It's a nice, beautiful, sunny day. Now I'm fully in the sun. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about viewing yourself abusively. I think this is something that people struggle a lot with. I've been there, no longer there. Where do we start? Always in the childhood. We always start in the childhood. Well, so whether you recognize it or not, there is a kind of stratification in society, and it goes from 1 to 10. And probably the main thing that applies to all people, that is of pertinence to all people, is their sexual market value. 1 to 10. What are you? 1 to 10. 1 to 10. What are you? And we get messages around this growing up. They may not be accurate messages. We'll get into accurate messages eventually. There's a nice spot in a little bit. I think I'll have a seat there when I get there. This is a nice environment. It reminds me of Central Oregon. So spoiler, I'm not in Central Oregon. But it looks a lot like it. And this is what I grew up in. I grew up in an environment like this. There's a lot of cattle everywhere. It was cattle country. Cattle and Leschwab tire country. It was tire country. Anyway, so 1 to 10. 1 to 10. You get a message. You get feedback from your parents. They're the primary ones responsible, but then I'll just speak from the public school lens because I mostly went to public school growing up. I did go to a private school 1 year. I didn't like it, but public school was worse, and I didn't quite realize it until I was well into the rest of my public school career. Anyway, we all get a message. 1 to 10. What are you? 1 to 10. 1 to 10. And it goes beyond this, right? It goes into class, your socioeconomic class. What are there? There's like 5 classes, I would say. There's the underclass, the welfare-dependent underclass. There is there's a lower class, there's the middle class, there's the upper class, and then there's the elite. Is that good enough? Do you like that? Some people say there's 7 classes. And I was kind of like looking at this a little bit. I belong to the entrepreneur class. That's the class I belong to. Which it's like a step above the precariat. That's some people, they say this thing, the precariat, and I'm still learning about this. But I always was taught there were 3 classes, lower, middle, and upper, but it's not like that. I think there's 5, and some people say there's 7. Anyway, so there's a spider web on it. So, okay, so your sexual market value, there's your class. Yeah, there's lots of other things. I mean, and you learn these social roles in school. And a lot of it also depends on how abused you are. Because you can be a really abused person. Your parents kind of raise you in a very punitive, repressive, a lot of people would say, repressive, oppressive, tyrannical, authoritarian. A lot of people like saying authoritarian is like a bad thing. And I kind of agree. But your parents raise you in a rough way. And then you are very shut down. or a classical analyst would say you're very repressed. And I like this area here. It feels like I'm in the movie Willow or something. Anyway, so you have a self-concept derived from these things, derived from your interactions, the feedback you get from your interactions. Are they winning interactions? Are they losing interactions? And most people emerge into adulthood with a certain way they view themselves. And there is a ruling class, there's a ruling elite in America, in our Western societies, and it's actually rather interconnected. And it has a lot to do with corporations, and it has a lot to do with government, the intersection of these things, and banking. And these people, it's in their interests to program everyone to view themselves abusively. Because if you attack yourself, you won't attack them. And yeah, so it's interesting when I've sort of bumped into, my curiosity leads me this way and that, right? And I've bumped into some really intense people from the elite classes. Right, because I just have a wide-ranging intelligence. I'm an inquisitive person, and I sometimes will stray into the realm of these people, and they generally don't want you there. We'll just say that. They generally don't want you there if you're not one of them. And everything is sort of programmed for you to believe this is the necessary arrangement. This is the way things should be. In fact, not only is it the way it should be, it's ideal. And there is a bit of truth to this. The truth is, as I see it, is that if you try to go out of class, you'll destabilize. If you try to go too far out of class, you really destabilize. And this means ambition, right? This means climbing upwards. That is destabilizing. Sliding downwards is its own kind of destabilization. You generally want to maintain class and go upwards. And there are all sorts of channels on that. Also, that's a lot of America's hustle culture. I think most millionaires are new millionaires. So, just statistically speaking, in America, that's available to us. I'm probably going to stop walking in a second. So I want to sit on a rock. I don't want to be in the glare of the sun so much. Yeah. So most millionaires are new millionaires. It is a nice time in America. It is the most profitable place. I just saw this, and it's compared to the rest of the world and compared to world history. I just saw this tweet from a guy complaining that he'd offered some software developer out of Texas 35,000 euros a year to work at the firm in Berlin. It was either 35 or 53. But this guy laughed at the German and said that he was making 200K US in his last role. And this German was very upset, and he said, "No, but this is a perfectly reasonable salary." And it's not, it's just Looney Tunes. That's way too low. That wouldn't even be, for a junior dev, right, starting out, that would be way too low in America. Last I saw was 65, but I haven't looked into that in a while, so. Anyway, if you don't get accurate feedback on this, you're going to run into all sorts of trouble. I knew a guy who did not get accurate feedback, and his mother raised him to think that he was a 10 out of 10. And he was like a 5 out of 10. And so he had all sorts of trouble, to put it mildly. He had all sorts of trouble, all sorts of angst. That's a nice way of putting it. And so he revealed this to, because you have to ask, right? You have to ask. If you don't ask, you can't verify. Without verification, figuring out what somebody else knows, you're kind of left in the dark. So when I get to know somebody, I just like to ask a lot of questions, and I'm an open book myself. I mean, personally, right? Personally. You gotta jump through certain hoops to win my friendship, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. But anyway, so you can get feedback that's no good, or you can be too crushed down and not exhibit a lot of good things. And then you will get feedback based on that. I think I'm going to stop here. I don't know, maybe I'll go a little further. So the feedback you get is not accurate one way or another. I guess there are people where they have the big fish in a small pond thing, where I see this a lot with, my high school had a very, we put it like intense theater program. There were a lot of aspirants. Same with my college, with the choir. The choir at my college was quite ambitious because it had a successful soprano. She was a soprano. I forget anyway, but she had done quite well. And they'd paid good money to bring her on. And they kind of got her at a bit of a discount too. I think she was attracted to this area of Oregon and she wanted to be there. And so they put on some airs, and I don't know, some successful people came out of that program. I think they are in New York now, and a couple people that I was friends with in high school ended up being in like Broadway stuff in New York City. And so a lot of people had a lot of ambition. And this matters, like the more sort of embedded in the class system or class awareness that you are, the more this stuff kind of matters. And so then people really are, without self-knowledge, a product of the environment that they came up in. And so, this is a terrible spot. It's like light is just in my face. The sun's just really like right there. I'll turn around. I'll find a different spot, a little more shaded. And there is a cruelty that enforces status. So it's a verbal cruelty, although it can cross into other areas. The first thing that springs to mind is Mel Gibson's depiction of William Wallace in Braveheart. He was an upstart, He wasn't from the aristocracy. I don't think, anyway. William Wallace was in the movie, anyway, he's a peasant. And when he goes to war, eventually the noblemen undermine him, and there's enough momentum in that direction that he is given over to the King of England. He's tortured to death. And then the aristocrats can carry on their war of freedom without him in this compromised way. But that's a good example anyway. He rose too far out of class. He was an upstart. And there's definitely that going on today, for sure. There is some of that going on today. This is better. The sun isn't just boom right in my face. So, and what you do, and like your parents' momentum does have an effect on your life. But this is where important to, like, it's important to make a plea for self-knowledge, an appeal to self-knowledge. So viewing yourself abusively, if status is enforced by cruelty, then you have internalized that. And your lack of being a 10 out of 10 from the upper class, from the elite class, from one of the table of 300, depending on who you ask. Are you in the high table right, from the John Wick series. Is your family part of the high table? Are you one of the 300 that's right under the table of 10? And then Lucifer is the top seat of the table of 10. You're not from the family 300? Oh, you should hate yourself. Right, that's the cultural programming. And a few people are let in every year. These are like the Beyoncés and the Jay-Z's and stuff. The Kardashians and, oh my goodness, these people are allowed in. That's a little conspiratorial, but it does happen this way, I think. You don't need to view yourself abusively. You can just view yourself empirically. You can just view yourself soberly. And that, it means all sorts of things. But and it doesn't mean, you need to, like, because you're not of the upper class or something, then you need to nail yourself. You are in the position that you are in, and it's just good to know what that is, without all the shaming, and without all the aggression, without all the performative, keeping up with the Joneses, all that. That may or may not be what you want to do, but it's not something you automatically have to do. And everyone sort of operates off of this. I'm not saying, like, go live in a burlap bag, go dress yourself in a burlap bag and just go crazy philosopher with a bowl by the river style and just never ever care. I'm not saying that. I'm also not saying go, because you feel that truly inside you're a blue-haired, pierced face, unisex person, that you need to go after that. I'm not saying that at all. But you just want to, when you're looking at yourself, you're appraising yourself, you just want to know how it is. What is your intelligence? What is your sexual market value? What class do you come from? Who do you need to consult to figure this stuff out? And what is it that you want to do with your life? Because you could pursue status. I mean, some people want to do that, and to some people that's very important. But remember, status is enforced by cruelty. And so at some point you will be expected to play the cruelty game. And I'm not saying that the opposite of that is like, joining some Antifa rally or some Antifa group and, man, there's no hierarchies, man. I'm not saying the opposite is true. I mean, but you want to live your life by your conscience. And so living by these, even like living by your class or living by your sexual market value or living by your intelligence, these are also immutable traits in some way. I mean, you can change your class a bit. You can change your sexual market value within, I'd say 3 points. 3 points is what's available to the average person. 2.5 points, you can bump up, you can bump down. I mean, you could really bump down if you really went after it. Your height, I guess you could change that. You need to get height lengthening, leg lengthening, limb lengthening surgery. I'm so full of words today. You can change these things, I guess. But even, knowing your immutable characteristics, it's useful. It tells you like how the rest of the world is going to view you. And I do think it is important to have, if you want to be successful, I think it's, if you have some goals that you plan to attain or achieve, it is important to have empathy for how other people view you. At least to a good extent, because, most things are social endeavors. Most achievements are social achievements. And so when you engage in that, you're engaging with other people. You want an achievement, you want to endeavor something, the road leads through other people. There are very few vocations that are just completely solitary that lead to like gangbusters money. I guess you could be like an AI engineer. I've been thinking, now I'm feeling better. I'm like looking at this AI stuff, this TLM stuff, and going, maybe I need to wrap my head around this. But there's very few endeavors that are solely solo endeavors, and you're going to go from you grew up in the trailer park, and you were a 2 out of 10, and you had a 90 IQ, and then you figured out this one thing, and now you're 120 IQ, and you're 6'3", and you are a part of the elite. Like this doesn't happen, you know. But so your social mobility is limited within certain bounds, of course. But you know, in terms of working with other people, you'll want to know how they view you. You'll want to know how you're landing for other people, and that's mostly different than viewing yourself abusively, unless you're like an abusive person. Then, if you're viewing yourself abusively, you're saying things to yourself that I don't know. That a mainline counselor would be like, "Well, that's kind of abusive." They're moral relativists, and you probably need to be saying like some pretty terse things with yourself, you know. But generally, having this cruel voice of self-recrimination and self, I really want to get the wording perfectly here. Self-scrutiny, this condemnatory, shaming, aggressive voice with self-scrutiny, unless you're really off the rails, like you're like drunk driving and you're picking up a hard drug habit, and that's generally not how you want to work with yourself. If you get into philosophy is the study of wisdom, it's the study of reality. So just knowing what is real, what is true, is, well, you have to test against your propositions. And so it's important to treat these ideas that you come to about yourself as best working theories, as propositions, as best known knowledge, so that if you get feedback to the contrary, or maybe you're looking for a lot of feedback, you're in a feedback garnering stage, you have a lot of uncertainty. And so, well, the best thing to do in that situation is to gather as much information as possible. Then you're not married to your conclusions, and you can change, and you can do what it is. You can discover new values, and you can discover your station in life. What is it exactly that you want to do? I mean, I'm heading into middle age, and I don't think I've had a crisis, but I certainly had a soul search, you know. What is it that I want to do? What is it that I really want to do for the next 25 years? And obviously I want to consult with people and, you know, be a counselor of sorts. But I want to add something to this, you know. And I know my abilities, I know my limitations, I know my time limitations, I know my commitments. And so setting an expectation that's unrealistic would lead to some sort of, it would lead to a self-recrimination. It would lead to a disappointment. And that's not my MO at this point. I mean, disappointment is, well, it's something you want to learn from, but if it's habitual, then it's wasted breath. It means you're not setting your expectations correctly. And that, again, that goes back into the childhood, like how accurately were expectations set for you. And it's very important that, if we're talking in terms of peaceful parenting, it's very important that parents set sober, accurate, judicious, and even like room for the kid to decide kind of expectations. Expectations that where the child can succeed within realistic bounds, you know? Instead of setting these things that are way out of bounds, and it's no good. It's no good for people. And it happens all the time, you know. Who's this person I was learning about? They were going, oh yeah, it was Himmler. It was Heinrich Himmler. It was the snippet of Russell Crowe. I've read Himmler's biography. I've read a third of it from David Irving, and then I just got on to other things. But I was reminded by Russell Crowe that Himmler, he plays Himmler in, I think it's some Nuremberg, you know, the kangaroo courts at Nuremberg. He plays Himmler, and Himmler was at regular school, and he was a terrible student. This is Germany, and everybody's smart in Germany at this point, real smart. And then he went to military school, and he did extremely well for himself. He became an ace pilot. I think he had the top kills, or second, you know, next to the Red Baron. He had like the second most kills in World War I. And he was a true innovator. I mean, a lot of these guys in the interwar period, like they hung on like ticks. I mean, it was the same with Patton. Patton basically he created tank warfare. I mean, he basically thought it up. Like, the machinery was there. He did everything he could to get close to it. And then in the interwar period, I mean, he was chasing like Mexican bandits, and He'd been in the military his whole life, but the interwar period, he hung in there while all the funding got cut. Hung in there, and he did extremely well for himself. Became, I think, a 3-star general, and was the finest. Some say, some people have their issues with his tactics, but became, I think, the finest Allied general in the Second World War. And he came from blue blood. I think that his wife was even much more blue-blooded than him, really in the ruling families. And he was the prototypical country gentleman. I mean, he was an equestrian and had a massive library and devoted himself to learning by and large. So he performed well to his station. Himmler, I think you would say he did as well. And he, of course, lost his grip on the Führer's ear as the war progressed, and he turned himself over to like art acquisition and stuff like this in the interests of the German people. So he also really delivered on his station. And, I'm not saying that society's expectations are irrational or they're inaccurate. They can be. But oftentimes the people who perform the best have the most accurate feedback when they're growing up, ergo Patton, ergo Himmler, ergo a lot of these NFL quarterbacks that come from good pedigrees and all this nice families in Texas and all this. When you have really accurate feedback, then I think you are really set up to succeed. It's the feedback that needs to be adjusted if you didn't get accurate feedback growing up. And so, in this sense, this is where self-knowledge is useful. And then it's also useful in projecting forward, looking at your own. Let's see if I can hop up on here. Yeah, all right, that's nice. It's also helpful for you as a parent, like, how are you going to work with your kids? Expectations are, I think, a natural part of parenting. People aren't wrong to have their expectations. Just making sure they're accurate, making sure they're philosophical. That's a good way to go. And I think we're, in some ways, a long ways away from that. You can be accidentally born into a higher cycle class family, and then that's a great advantage. You can be born into a troubled family or somewhere in between. That would be me. I was born somewhere in between. And so some of the signals you get are encouraging, and some of them are really not. And people will be born, sometimes they will be born with a lot of ambition, a lot of internal drive, and then they'll be born to parents who are very disturbed and troubled. Particularly this happens a lot with mothers now. There are a lot of single mothers, and there's a lot of disturbance among women as mothers. And there's a lot of mothers with bad habits right now. And so there are a lot of sons born to these women where their masculine drives, their instincts, their urges, men want to settle land, men want to make things right, men want to order things, are rebuffed by their mothers. That's very inaccurate feedback. This, it's kind of a way of looking at it anyway, because you could call it abuse, or you could call it like failure, moral failures. And then these guys will cover up for it because they're trained by mama, right? They're corrupted by mother. And so they will normalize it, and then they'll pick women with bad habits down the line. And that's a whole thing, that's like lowering people in a really big way. If you are a young European male, think back a couple of generations. Maybe something screwy happened in your time, or maybe something screwy happened in your parents' time. But how normal was it a couple of generations ago? It's very worth considering. And think back on the enthusiasm. Think back on the outlook. Think back on the health. I have to watch my words a little bit. This isn't the paywall. I could really say some salacious things here, but we'll tone it down for the old YouTube. I'm trying to build up this YouTube a bit. So. That stuff's worth considering as well, and how unified were your forefathers. How unified were your ancestors? And can this be replicated in your time? That's a dangerous thought. That's not a thought that is allowed. But I think it's a necessary thought. Because if you could get around a bunch of young men, or, men your age anyway. I can't say I'm a young man anymore. I really am headed into middle age. But if you can be exposed to and you can be involved in people like this, what kind of feedback are they going to give you? It's going to be good. It's going to be good feedback. And the powers that be don't like that. And too many, and they, it's said too many young unmarried men destabilize society, but married men do their thing too. Married men are pushing us in a certain direction. And so it's good to be squatted up to some degree. It's good to be involved with other philosophical people because they will get you feedback. It can be these little interactions, right? It doesn't have to be explicit. People get pretty autistic about it needing to be explicit, but it doesn't have to be. Just watch the things that you say to yourself after you have some winning interactions with other guys. I mean, I'm not tailoring this video specifically to guys, but watch what you say to yourself after you interact with positive people that are your age and have your values. And some of this, remember, it's immutable characteristics. Like some of this, you can't help how it is. And so getting really hung up on it is not necessarily the point of order. Because a lot of people will use this. I've known a lot of guys who are from, private boarding school backgrounds, private everything backgrounds, very wealthy parents. I've known a lot of guys like this where they are detached from a lot of that because a lot of it has fallen away, but they still keep those habits. And they get pretty stingy with people about their immutable characteristics. And I think it does them a disfavor. Some people call this like wignat. They'll call this wignattery or something. I've seen that. And we are not headed toward that anymore. That's the past. We're headed toward a Bitcoin world order. And it's lovely. It's a hard currency society. And the most virtuous among us will do a lot better. And so getting nasty and stingy about immutable characteristics is it's not needed. Those are old voices, and I get it. Your instincts can tell you like this is the thing to do, because in your genetic memory, basically, it's crying out like this is the way to enforce things. But that's all fiat. That's all predicated upon a fiat arrangement. So the point of philosophy is really to come in and break up some of those strictures, because you can spread a lot more virtue if you do that. People see, they look at that sentence, they go, oh, that's really revolutionary. What the hell? I knew this Stephen guy was a revolutionary. And it's like, no, it's just reality. Like Bitcoin is, I'm not revolutionary. Bitcoin is really ho-hum. It's just finally here, and thank goodness. Or Monero. Monero is finally here, right? You can be a turd about Bitcoin, but you can't be a turd about Monero. Monero's like 2.5 times this year. It's switching on, baby. It's a Monero world order. Have you done your currency swap from Monero? Have you gone into Cake Wallet and done your cryptocurrency swap for some Monero, bro? So getting in there and challenging some of these strictures, I think, is important, because the world is full of surprises. And then it's not. And then it's not, We've all been melting pots stirred around. And there are some surprises in that. And then there's a lot of not. There's 10% surprises and 90% not surprises. But you don't want to cut yourself out of a valuable connection because of your preconceived whatever that is based on this mountain of bones that certain banking families rose to the top of. It's ugly. It's ugly. I don't like mentioning this stuff because, well, a lot of people are real nasty about it. That's the first thing, I think. And it's a little too wide-ranging. It's a little too, theoretical, I think, for some people. But it's stuff that you inevitably look at if you're doing good self-knowledge work, if you're doing philosophy. You'll look at it at some point. And again, like I said before, I mean, you know, class is real. Like, you're not going to skyrocket out of your class because you do self-knowledge or something. But you're certainly not going to go down in class if you do self-knowledge and philosophy. I think a lot of people are sort of, they sense that they'd have to give up their cruelty if they did philosophy. And so they're loath to do that. But what you get in return is 100-fold. What you get in return is so much virtue and self-aware virtue, you know, ontological virtue, as opposed to like accidental. So I think it's totally worth it. And, you know, and someone could say, oh, well, you think it's totally worth it because you come from such and such class and blah, 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 blah. But, you know, that's all based on speculation, right? People don't actually really know my background. It's a decent background. It's a decent background. It's not Molyneux status. I think of Molyneux and William Molyneux, his ancestor, best friends with John Locke. Nah, not quite at that level. Not quite at that level. But it's not bad. It's not bad. So, and then someone could look at that and be like, well, you know, well, yours is higher than mine, so you're willing to give yours up. Because, you know, giving up your status is how you attain virtue. But most people would look at it and go, I don't want to give up my status because I don't want to lose face. And so what you're asking me to do, Steve, this self-reflection you're asking me to do is sick and cowardly on your part. They don't want to give up their status. But giving up status to do the virtuous thing is what the conscience compels us to do. It's what universals compel us to do. And a lot of very powerful people that are powerful today have been at that juncture. They've looked at the fork in the road and they decided for themselves that they would have the materialistic, carnal intrigues that this life has to offer. And they gave up on virtue and they turned their back on it. They're more hardened than perhaps one would think. And some people just, they just have a predatorial sense and they're just plowing ahead in life, and they come to that fork in the road, they plow right through. So those people that hesitate, you wonder if they're worse or they, you know. So, and history is full of would-be philosophers, right? I don't think actually history is all that full of philosophers. History is full of would-be philosophers that basically skipped over an empirical look at the condition and status of children who have the most vulnerabilities and the lowest status of us all. A lot of would-be philosophers, a lot of highfalutin, word salad, clever intellect manipulators that maybe they wavered at that juncture, but they made their choice. And so we've had to undo a lot of their thinking. We've had to live in a lot of their thinking. I think a lot of their thinking has been undone. And I hope to have contributed my own part in stuff like this. It's a shame. It's a shame. I should maybe upload a lot of my old videos to YouTube because there's stuff like this in there. So yeah, another walk and talk. I'm feeling like I got through what I wanted to say. Just a wee little bit out of breath. I mean, I'm in really good muscle shape. I've put on about 12 pounds in the last 3 weeks or so. Really good muscle shape. I got pretty thin there because my medical treatments sort of took it out of me. I'm still in treatment anyway, some pretty heavy stuff. But I do seem to be improving, so I am able to put on some weight, which is really cool. So at some point I'll probably speak to the full nature of that anyway. But, you know, a snippet of it is that H. pylori, I mentioned the H. pylori in a previous video. Man, that like wrecked my life. That H. pylori wrecked my life and left me with all these after effects. So, but yeah, feeling strong, but the cardio not quite there. Been walking on the treadmill. But I've just been lifting mostly besides. I haven't been doing sprints and stuff. I miss the sprints. Love the sprints. We'll get to that. I'm not quite there yet. So Anyways, good to be with you. Good to do another walk and talk in the bag. Gosh, it's been a little while, hey. The first, is this my first public facing? Didn't I do that? I thought I put I did a Hitler series, where I went into like a self-knowledge take on Hitler based on a few sources that I'd read and was freshened up on at that time. Maybe I put one of those up publicly. I should put those up publicly at some point. I think they are critical viewing, critical for understanding what we're heading into, the age of rage that dawns upon us, the age of informants and surveillance that is upon us. I think that'd be a good video to put up. It would help a lot of people, I think, get out of some of what's coming. So anyway, I think that's it from me. Good to be with you. Thanks for giving me your time. You could be anywhere else. I'd always appreciate a donation. Smash the thumbs up. We'll talk soon.